Welcome for artelino.com for another edition of our video productions. I'm Dieter Van Schura, and I'm the manager and owner of the Artelino company, and we sell Japanese prints, and we produce these videos always related to Japanese prints. And today I have a very interesting topic. The title is Samurai and Firearms. Actually, today we have more of a kind of a history lesson, history hour. When it comes to the topic samurai and firearms, there is a great misconception. And there's one reason for this misconception, and that's one film, The Last Samurai. Well, I don't know if you saw it, or I saw it, quite impressive. But from an historical aspect, it's complete nonsense. You see brave samurai fighting with swords and with bows and arrows against cannons because their code of honor, Bushido, well, is against using firearms. That's not what's appropriate for a samurai. Historical, again, complete nonsense. The firearms, matchlock guns, came to Japan for the first time in 1543 by the Portuguese. And in this video, I want to explain you how firearms were used by samurai. And then I want to pick out two battles. One is the Battle of Nagashino of 1575, when firearms were for the first time used in a very effective way. And the other one is the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, the last stand of the samurai. And the actual historical background for this film, The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. And at the end, I want to take a look at the topic, Samurai Firearms on Japanese Prints. Well, let's start. How did firearms come to Japan? It was a rainy, stormy day in 1543 when a Portuguese ship landed on the island of Nagashino. On board of this ship were Portuguese adventurers and Jesuit missionaries who wanted to bring Christianity to Japan. And they also had a few matchlock guns on board. That was in 1543, and that was a period of great civil wars for 100 to 150 years in Japan. It was the period of warring states, or also called by historians the Sengoku period. That was when feudal lords in Japan were fighting for the supremacy. And at that time, the leading warlord was Oda Nobunaga. And he welcomed the Christian missionaries immediately because he had hoped that they could build a counterweight against rather pugnacious Buddhist monks who lived in large cloisters and whom he considered to be a threat for his rule. And Oda Nobunaga was also very impressed by these firearms, and he embraced the new technology and ordered 500 of these firearms from his own local swordsmiths. The Japanese called these firearms, they called them Tanigashima or Teppo, Tanigashima after the name of the island where these Portuguese had landed. At the beginning, these Tanigashima did not prove very effective on the battleground, especially when it was raining, because the firing mechanism was very, very vulnerable to rain when it became wet. But the Japanese, they're great artisans, great engineers, and they soon applied some improvements to these firearms. They built some protective boxes over the firing mechanism, and thus these matchlock guns could also be used in rain. Now let's talk about the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, that is so roughly 30 years after the landing of the Portuguese. And The generals of Oda Nobunaga soon recognized that they had to organize the use of these firearms in order to be effective. They recognized that they had to organize special formations of special, in French, I think also in English this word exists, arquebusiers, so matchlock musketeers, matchlock gunners. They formed special units. The advantage was that a matchlock gun could also be used by an untrained foot soldier. A samurai, in order to fight effectively with swords and bow and arrow, needed training of several years, whereas the handling of a matchlock gun, you could learn in one day, and to be effective in formations, that could be learned within 2 or 4 weeks. And another advantage, bullets could easily penetrate Japanese armor. Well, so they implemented these special units of gunners, arquebusiers, and they deployed, the Japanese called these special foot soldiers ashigaru, well, infantrymen under the command of samurai. On the day of the Battle of Nagashino, well, I should first tell something else. Oda Nobunaga was allied with the Tokugawa clan, and the battle was against the Takeda clan. So the Takeda against Nobunaga, allied with the Tokugawa. And Oda Nobunaga, he had positioned roughly 3,000 of these arquebusiers, of these matchlock gunners, behind protective wooden palisades. And they were organized in 3 lines. The first 2 lines fired in volleys on command. The 3rd line was there to recharge, and then behind them was a 4th line. These were ashigara, foot soldiers, which were equipped with long spears in waiting stands just in case to repel cavalry if they should break through the lines. And now he comes. On the day of the battle, it was raining heavily. The Takeda generals, they were not so familiar with the technique of matchlock guns, and they thought, because it's raining, the matchlock guns could not be used, and Takeda ordered his cavalry to charge against the palisades. The gunners were trained to fire when the attackers were at a distance of 50 meters. This had proved to be the most effective distance, and the Nobunaga musketeers fired their volleys on command, and it was devastating. It was devastating. Takeda launched one charge after the other, and the defeat of Takeda was terrible. Yeah. From then on, squadrons of ashigaru, matchlock men, became a regular part of the armies until so roughly 1600. At that time, Shogun Ieyasu, he was the head of the Tokugawa clan. He finally got the upper hand among all these fighting local lords, and he united and pacified Japan. That was the beginning of the Edo period, a period of peace. The Edo period lasted until 1868, so roughly 250 years. Before the end of the Edo period, also some clashes had begun between the forces of the shogun and the new order, you can say. So roughly a period of 250 years in peace. And now I want to show you an impressive short 1-minute film from a YouTube video where you see these charges at the Battle of Nagashino. You will see it's very impressive. Let's take a look. Let me see. Well, and now you can see how the second line moves forward. I think we can stop here. Okay, next we make a jump now in history of, well, after the end of the Edo period, at the beginning of the Meiji period, to 1877. The Satsuma Rebellion, the actual historical background of this film, The Last Samurai. The Satsuma Rebellion is also called the Seinon War, and it was an attempt of frustrated samurai to topple the Meiji government. The Meiji government had initiated a very fast westernization and reforms of Japan, which at the end of the Edo period was basically a medieval country. Yeah? And the samurai, they had huge privileges. They didn't have to work. They were paid in rice, and the value of rice became less and less. So they became poorer and poorer, and there were even some cases where the wives of samurai had to sell themselves to brothels just to maintain their family. So it was an uprising of desperate rebels, samurais who tried to restore the old order. Well, the samurai rebels were equipped with guns and even cannons, not like in the film. They had seized these cannons in the early days of the conflict by attacking military depots of the central Meiji government in Kagoshima in the south of Japan and elsewhere. The samurai were under the leadership of Saigo Takamori. Saigo Takamori was a former member of the Meiji government himself. He was a samurai, and he was very popular among the Japanese population. The rebels, they were several 10,000s. They had some success in the beginning with the siege of Kumamoto Castle, but rather fast, within a few months, the central Meiji government got the upper hand. The Meiji government, they had a newly formed army of conscripts. They were not very motivated, but they were equipped with modern weapons, and the Meiji government was capable of transporting troops very fast to the battle scene. By then, a railroad system had already existed down into the south, and another thing that had already existed were telephone lines. So they could communicate fast, and they had some modern ships, iron ships, that they also used to bring troops into the battle scene very, very fast. So the samurai rebels, they were, by the way, equipped with rather old-fashioned rifles that could fire 6 bullets in 1 minute. The Meiji army had the other way around. The Meiji army had modern guns that could fire 6 bullets in 1 minute, and the rebels had guns that could fire only 1 bullet per minute. The last samurai rebels, they retreated to Kagoshima. They were encircled in the hills of Shiroyama. The general of the Meiji troops, he requested Saigo Takamori, the leader of the rebels, to surrender, but he refused. So in the morning of September 24 in 1877, the shelling of the hills of Shiroyama began with artillery from land cannons and with artillery from several imperial ships. Saigo Takamori and his last comrades, they committed seppuku, and this was the end of the samurai class. Well, long story today. Now let's talk a little bit about Japanese prints and how the use of firearms and these events is shown in Japanese prints, in ukiyo-e. Japanese prints, they show all aspects of life, of history and whatever. Nevertheless, images of samurai with firearms, with guns, or these ashigaru with these matchlock guns. They are very rare on Japanese prints. Also, battle scenes from the Sengoku period, you will hardly find them on Edo prints. What you can find are prints that were created during the Meiji period. Well, and that has a simple reason. It was a question of censorship, because until the end of the Meiji period in 1868, the ruling shogunate under the Tokugawa clan, everything that had to do with actual events or with the history of the Tokugawa family was a no-no. It was banned, or at the best it was very risky to create such prints that showed such events. So prints that we can see today with battle scenes from the Sengoku period, they're practically all from the Meiji period. So let me show you a few of these images. We have an article on our website, also titled Samurai and Firearms, and I want to show you now a few of these typical prints. There you see, let me go a little bit away out of the picture. Well, this is a print by Yoshitoshi Tsukioka, famous Meiji artist. And there you see, here are the gunners behind the palisades, and here is the attacking cavalry. Let me show a few more. Okay, well, this is from the Satsuma Rebellion, and a few more. Most that we can, also this one from the Satsuma Rebellion, most of these battle prints and prints from the Satsuma Rebellion are shown as triptychs. Well, let's finish here, my friends, today. Long video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like it, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. I would like to see you for our next video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.